Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Your support means the world. Quick question. Where are you listening from today? Which city? Which country? Drop it below. Now let's dive into today's story. Clay Martin's hands tightened on the steering wheel as he turned on a Maple Drive, his mind still processing the dispatcher's scheduling change that had sent him home 3 hours early. After 15 years at the emergency dispatch center, he'd learned to appreciate these rare moments of unexpected free time. Maybe he'd surprise Sophie and Max with their favorite takeout, make an ordinary Thursday feel special. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across his front lawn as he pulled into the driveway, noticing Sophie's backpack thrown carelessly on the porch steps. His 16-year-old daughter was usually more careful with her things. Clay reached for his phone to check if she'd left him any messages about having company over when he heard voices drifting from the backyard gazebo. "Your mom's really going to let you meet them again this Sunday?" A male voice, Tyler, Sophie's boyfriend of 6 months, carried clearly through the crisp spring air. Clay's hand froze on the car door handle. Something in Tyler's tone made him pause. "Yeah, Lawrence says James and Emily are excited to see us again." Sophie's voice held an enthusiasm Clay hadn't heard from her in months. "Mom says it's important for us to bond as a family before the move." The move? Clay's mind raced as he silently pulled out his phone and opened the voice recorder app. 15 years of emergency dispatch work had taught him the value of documenting everything. "But what about your dad?" Tyler asked. "Sophie, you can't just disappear with your moms. What do you even call them? Secret family?" "Lawrence isn't like that," Sophie protested. "He really cares about us. Mom says Dad works so much he probably won't even notice when we're gone. She's been planning this for ages with Lawrence. They've got this amazing house in his new development. Mom says once the divorce papers are served, it'll all happen really fast." Clay's jaw clenched, but his hands remained steady as they held the phone. The same steadiness that had earned him the nickname Rock at the dispatch center, the calm voice that guided first responders through the worst crises imaginable. "I don't know, sophomore. It seems messed up. Your dad's always been cool to me. Mom says that's just his dispatcher face. She says he's emotionally unavailable. That's why she had to find someone else. Lawrence actually listens to her, and his kids are great. James is only 2 years older than Max, and Emily's basically my age." A memory flashed through Clay's mind. Working double shifts during the pandemic, coming home exhausted only to find Marina complaining about his absence. He'd picked up every overtime opportunity possible to afford Sophie's dance classes, Max's chess tournaments, the family vacations. Marina insisted they needed to stay connected. "When did your mom even meet this Lawrence guy?" "About 8 years ago, I think. At some real estate thing. Mom says it was like fate. She's been taking us to see them on Sundays for almost a year now. When Dad's working his weekend shift. Lawrence's ex-wife is totally out of the picture, so Mom helps with his kids too. It's like we're already a family." 8 years. Clay's mind calculated rapidly. 8 years of lies while he worked himself to exhaustion providing for his family. 8 years of Marina's book club meetings and girls' weekends that he'd never questioned because he'd trusted her completely. "Does Max know?" "No, Mom says he's too young to understand. But he'll adapt once we move. Lawrence's place has this amazing pool, and there's a chess club nearby that's way better than the one here." Clay heard the rustle of movement from the gazebo, followed by the soft sounds of teenage kissing. He stopped the recording and sat in silence, his tactical mind already shifting into emergency response mode. This wasn't a highway pileup or a 5-alarm fire, but it required the same methodical approach. He backed out of the driveway as quietly as he'd arrived, knowing Sophie and Tyler would never realize he'd been there. His phone showed a text from Max. "Chess club running late. Need pickup at 6. Perfect. That gave him 2 hours to make some calls. As Clay drove toward downtown, his dispatch training kicked in. Assess the situation, gather information, formulate a response plan. Marina might think she knew him, but she'd never understood that his dispatcher face wasn't a mask. It was the core of who he was. The steady hand that never wavered, The calm voice that guided others through their worst moments. The strategic mind that could coordinate multiple response teams simultaneously. Now those skills would serve a different purpose. His first call was to a number he'd saved years ago, but never thought he'd use. Rebecca Sanders, a private investigator recommended by a detective he worked with regularly. She answered on the second ring. "Miss Sanders? This is Clay Martin. I find myself in need of your services, and I understand discretion is your specialty." Rebecca Sanders' office matched her reputation. Professional, understated, and meticulously organized. Clay sat across from her desk 3 days later, reviewing the preliminary findings that justified every penny of her substantial retainer. "Lawrence Hart," Rebecca began, sliding a thick folder across the desk. "Real estate developer, specializes in luxury communities. Divorced twice, both times under similar circumstances to your situation. He has a pattern of targeting married women, particularly those with access to significant financial resources." Clay opened the folder, studying the photograph of a man whose carefully cultivated charm couldn't quite mask the predatory glint in his eyes. Lawrence Hart looked exactly like the type of man who would convince a woman to destroy her family. Expensive suit, practiced smile, and an air of entitled arrogance. "Tell me about the money," Clay said, his voice carrying the same professional detachment he used during major crisis calls. Rebecca pulled out several bank statements. "Your wife has been systematically transferring funds to a separate account for the past 5 years. Small amounts at first, but increasing significantly over the last 18 months. The account was set up through offshore channels by this man." She placed another photo on the desk. Clay's hand tightened imperceptibly on his armrest. Ronald Chavez, his best friend of 20 years, smiled up from the photograph. "Ronald has been helping Marina hide the money." The betrayal twisted in Clay's gut, but his face remained impassive. "He's done more than that," Rebecca continued. "His wife, Janice Roberts, has been providing alibis for Marina's Sunday meetings with Hart and his children. They've created quite an elaborate cover story involving charity work and women's support groups." Clay thought of all the Sunday dinners he'd missed with his family while working overtime, the times Marina had told him she was helping Janice with various charitable causes. The pieces clicked into place with the same terrible clarity as when he pieced together clues during a major emergency response. "There's more," Rebecca said, her tone softening slightly. "Hart's new development, Riverside Estates, includes a house that's been reserved under a shell company. The paperwork traces back to an account funded partially by your inheritance from your parents. The inheritance he'd received 5 years ago after his father's death. Money he'd entrusted to Marina to invest for their children's college funds." Clay's fingers drummed once on the armrest, his only visible reaction to the news. "What about Hart's children?" "James, 14, and Emily, 17. Their mother, Teresa Fletcher, lost primary custody during their divorce 3 years ago. Hart's lawyers painted her as unstable and career-obsessed. Sound familiar?" Clay nodded. It was the same narrative Marina had started weaving about him. The workaholic father too busy saving other people's lives to care about his own family. "I want everything," Clay said quietly. "Every meeting, every phone call, every dollar. Most importantly, I want to know exactly what she's told our children." Rebecca's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "There's something else you should know. Your wife's been meeting with a family court mediator, building a case for primary custody. She's documenting your work hours, painting a picture of an absent father." "How long?" "The meeting started 6 months ago. She's laying groundwork for a smooth transition once she serves you with divorce papers. Hart's lawyers are known for aggressive custody battles." Clay stood, straightening his jacket with the same precise movements he used when preparing for a major crisis response. "I need surveillance on all Sunday meetings. I want to know exactly what my children are being told and how they're being manipulated. And Miss Sanders? I want Teresa Fletcher's contact information." "Already ahead of you," Rebecca smiled, handing him another file. "Miss Fletcher has been quite interested in Hart's new relationship. She's documented some interesting patterns in how he operates." As Clay left the office, his phone buzzed with a text from the dispatch center. A new automated system was being proposed that would eliminate half the staff positions. He allowed himself a grim smile. Marina had no idea that while she plotted her escape, she'd chosen the exact wrong moment to underestimate him. The emergency dispatch center hummed with tension as Clay stood before the assembled staff, his presence commanding attention despite the early hour. 30 pairs of eyes fixed on him, waiting for his response to the automation proposal that threatened their livelihoods. The company claims their AI can replace human judgment. Clay's voice carried clearly through the room. I invite them to handle a multi-vehicle pileup with hazardous materials, trapped children, and conflicting witness reports. Let's see their algorithm manage that. Andrea Small, the department director, nodded approvingly from her position near the door. She'd always appreciated Clay's ability to cut through chaos to the heart of any crisis. Clay's right, she added. We're not just dispatchers. We're the first line of crisis management. No computer can replace human intuition and experience. As if on cue, the emergency lines lit up. Multiple calls reporting a major accident on Highway 27. Exactly the kind of scenario Clay had just described. He moved to his station with practiced efficiency, already coordinating with Kayla Harper, the paramedic instructor who served as their primary field training liaison. Clay, we've got at least 12 vehicles involved. Kayla's voice came through clear and professional. Semi-truck carrying industrial cleaning supplies rolled over. I need you to coordinate fire, hazmat, and medical response. For the next 3 hours, Clay orchestrated a response that would later be used as a textbook example of why human dispatchers couldn't be replaced. His calm voice guided first responders through the chaos, his quick decisions preventing the situation from escalating into an environmental disaster. That was impressive, Kayla said later, finding him in the break room. The way you redirected that tanker truck before it reached the chemical spill saved us hours of cleanup and probably prevented several explosions. Clay accepted the coffee she offered, noting the concern in her eyes. They'd worked together for 5 years, long enough for her to notice the subtle changes in his demeanor lately. Something's wrong, isn't it? She asked quietly. You've been different these past few weeks. More focused, if that's even possible. Just dealing with some personal matters, Clay replied, his tone giving nothing away. Speaking of which, I need to make a call. Excuse me? In the privacy of his office, Clay connected with Megan Ruiz, the divorce attorney whose reputation for handling complex cases matched his own standards for precision. Mr. Martin, I've reviewed the evidence your PI gathered. Megan's voice was sharp and professional. Your wife's actions, using your inheritance, planning to remove the children from their schools, the secret meetings, they all work in our favor. But timing will be crucial. I understand, Clay replied, watching through his office window as the automated system salesman packed up their presentation materials. How long do you need to prepare everything? Give me 2 weeks to document everything properly. In the meantime, maintain your normal routine. Any change in behavior could alert her. Clay ended the call and returned to the dispatch floor, where Andrea was waiting with news about the automation proposal. The board wants you to head up a committee to evaluate the human element in emergency response, she said. After today's performance, they're reconsidering the automation timeline. I'll have a preliminary report ready by next week, Clay assured her, already seeing how this crisis could work to his advantage. Extra hours at the office would provide perfect cover for his meetings with lawyers and investigators. The day's shift ended with a department meeting where Clay presented a compelling defense of human dispatchers, his arguments strengthened by the morning's successful crisis management. His colleagues' appreciation was evident in their faces, their trust in his leadership absolute. If only they knew that while he fought to save their jobs, he was systematically preparing to dismantle the elaborate deception that had corrupted his family. But that's what dispatchers did best. Managed multiple crises simultaneously, maintained calm in the face of betrayal, and coordinated responses that would save what mattered most. As Clay drove home that evening, he allowed himself a moment of cold satisfaction. Marina thought she had orchestrated the perfect exit strategy, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail. She'd married a man who specialized in emergency response. And now, as he gathered evidence and built his case, he was responding to the greatest emergency of his life with the same methodical precision that had made him legendary in the dispatch center. The foundation of his family might be cracked, but he would ensure that when everything finally crumbled, he and his children would be standing on solid ground. The morning sun cast long shadows across Megan Ruiz's conference room as Clay spread out the evidence collected over the past month. The divorce attorney studied the documentation with the same precision Clay applied to his emergency protocols. "Your PI has been thorough," Megan noted, sorting through bank statements and surveillance photos. "Marina's been surprisingly careless with her digital footprint." "Arrogance makes people sloppy," Clay replied, his voice carrying the same steady calm he maintained during crisis calls. "She thinks I'm too focused on saving my dispatch team to notice what's happening at home." Speaking of which, Megan pulled out a particularly damning document. "How did you discover the connection between your inheritance and Hart's property purchase?" Rebecca Sanders found the paper trail. "Marina used my parents' inheritance money as a down payment on a house in Hart's new development. She actually forged my signature on several documents." The door opened, and Rebecca entered with a woman whose designer clothes couldn't hide the bitterness in her eyes. "Mr. Martin, meet Teresa Fletcher, Lawrence Hart's second ex-wife." Teresa's handshake was firm, her gaze direct. "When Rebecca told me about your situation, I recognized Lawrence's pattern immediately. He's doing to your wife exactly what he did to me, promising a perfect new family while hiding his assets offshore." "Tell him about the tax evasion," Rebecca prompted. Teresa pulled out her own file. "Lawrence has been underreporting his income for years. He creates shell companies for each development project, funnels money through them, then dissolves them before the IRS can track the funds. I discovered this during our divorce, but his lawyers buried my evidence." Clay's tactical mind was already mapping out the implications. "And now Marina is helping him hide money through accounts that Ronald set up." "Exactly," Megan confirmed. "We've documented every transfer. Marina's not just complicit in Hart's tax evasion. She's actively participating in fraud by using your inheritance money without authorization." "What about the children?" Clay asked Teresa. "How did Hart manipulate custody during your divorce?" Teresa's laugh was bitter. "He painted me as a workaholic mother who prioritized my career over family." Sound familiar? He's been using the same playbook for years. Isolate the wife from her support system, bond with the children, then use them as leverage during the divorce. Clay nodded, thinking of Sophie's enthusiastic descriptions of Herb's Sunday family. "Marina's been taking our children to his house every weekend, integrating them with his kids before the split." "Classic Lawrence," Teresa spat. "He did the same thing with the woman before me. Gets the kids attached, makes the transition seem natural. Then once the divorce starts, he uses that relationship to argue for custody." "Not this time," Clay said quietly, his tone carrying the same authority he used during major emergencies. "Megan, I want to restructure all my finances without alerting Marina." "Teresa, I need everything you have on Hart's business practices. And Rebecca, keep tracking those Sunday meetings. I want to know exactly what my children are being told." Megan began outlining the strategy. "We'll start by documenting every interaction with Marina and the children. Keep recordings of all conversations. Save every text. We need to establish a pattern of parental alienation." "Already done," Clay replied. "I installed cameras in the common areas of the house last week. Legal in our state, as long as there's no audio recording." Teresa looked impressed. "You're more prepared than I was. I let Lawrence blindside me with his custody suit. I coordinate emergency responses for a living," Clay explained. "The key is staying ahead of the crisis, anticipating every possible complication before it happens." Rebecca added another file to the growing stack. "Marina's getting careless. Last Sunday, she took the kids to Hart's house without bothering with the usual cover story. She's confident you're too distracted by work to notice. Let her think that." Clay's smile didn't reach his eyes. "While she's planning her exit strategy, we'll be documenting every move she makes." The meeting continued for another hour, each participant contributing to the intricate strategy. Clay's dispatch training served him well as he coordinated multiple streams of information, building a case that would leave no room for Marina or Hart to maneuver. As they wrapped up, Teresa pulled Clay aside. "Lawrence thinks he's untouchable. That's his weakness. He's done this so many times he's gotten sloppy. Use that." Clay nodded, already thinking of the next phase. "Thank you for your help, Ms. Fletcher. I promise you, this time Hart's pattern stops here." The anonymous tip about Ronald Chavez's unlicensed contracting work hit the regulatory board on a Tuesday morning. By Wednesday, investigators were combing through his business records, uncovering a pattern of fraud that extended far beyond building permits. Clay watched the developments from his office at the dispatch center, maintaining his usual professional demeanor while his former best friend's world began to crumble. The same day, an ethics investigation launched at Janice Roberts' real estate firm, triggered by concerned citizens questioning her involvement in suspicious property deals. Clay? A woman's hesitant voice drew his attention. He looked up to find Marina's sister, Gabriella Fink, standing in his doorway. Her eyes darted nervously down the hallway before she stepped inside. "Gabriella, this is unexpected." She closed the door quietly. "I can't stay long. Marina can't know I was here." She placed an envelope on his desk. "These are copies of emails between Marina and Lawrence. She's been planning something terrible." Clay opened the envelope, already suspecting what he'd find. The emails confirmed everything: detailed plans to move the children, manipulate custody arrangements, even scripts for how to present their new family to the court. "Why are you showing me this?" Clay's voice remained neutral, though his mind was already incorporating this new evidence into his strategy. Gabriella wrung her hands. "Because what she's doing is wrong. The way she talks about you to Lawrence, the lies she's telling the children, it's not right. And Lawrence, he's not who Marina thinks he is." "Explain." "His business partner, Stephen Fry, contacted me. The IRS is investigating their company. Lawrence has been using Marina to hide assets, just like he did with his ex-wives. Once the investigation goes public, he'll abandon her to save himself." Clay leaned back, studying Marina's sister. "And you're telling me this because despite what Marina thinks, you've been a good husband and father. Sophie and Max deserve better than being pawns in her fantasy life with Lawrence." After Gabriella left, Clay made a series of calls. Within hours, Stephen Fry was cooperating with federal investigators, trading information about Hart's tax evasion for leniency. Meanwhile, life continued as normal on the surface. Clay maintained Max's chess club schedule and attended Sophie's school events, documenting every instance of Marina's absence or manipulation. His cameras captured her whispered phone conversations with Hart, her attempts to poison the children against him, her growing carelessness as she focused on her escape plans. Teresa Fletcher proved invaluable, her bitter experience with Hart providing a roadmap of his tactics. "He's following his usual pattern," she reported during their weekly update. "The house and his development, the gradual integration of the families, the offshore accounts, he's getting predictable." "Predictable means vulnerable," Clay replied, reviewing the latest surveillance reports. "How's the evidence of child support fraud coming along?" Teresa's smile was sharp. "Documented and ready. He's been hiding income to reduce payments to our children for years. The IRS will be very interested." The pieces were falling into place faster than Clay had anticipated. Marina, consumed with her exit strategy, failed to notice the systematic dismantling of her support network. Ronald faced criminal investigations. Janice's professional reputation was in tatters, and Hart's business empire was beginning to show cracks. Even at work, where Clay continued to lead the fight against automation, his colleagues noticed a change in him. Not in his performance. He remained the steady hand during crises, but in his demeanor. There was a cold precision to his actions now, a calculated efficiency that went beyond his usual methodical approach. "You seem different lately," Kayla observed during a quiet moment between calls. "More focused, if that's possible." Clay allowed himself a small smile. "Let's just say I'm applying my crisis management skills to a personal situation." "Need any help?" she offered, her concern evident. "Actually," Clay replied, thinking of the next phase of his plan, "I might need a witness statement about my work performance. For documentation purposes." Kayla's eyes narrowed in understanding. "Just tell me when." The trap was a masterpiece of timing and coordination, worthy of the most complex emergency response Clay had ever managed. Each element was precision-timed. Each participant knew their role, and Marina never saw it coming. It began on a Monday morning when the IRS announced their investigation into Hart Development Corporation. Clay, monitoring from his office, watched the dominoes begin to fall. His phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca Sanders. Marina's at the bank. Operation launched. Clay allowed himself a moment of satisfaction as he imagined Marina's face when she discovered her secret accounts frozen by banking authorities. The official explanation would cite potential connection to Hart's tax investigation, but Clay knew the truth. Every transfer, every forged document, had been meticulously documented and reported. The second phase triggered automatically. Marina's credit cards were declined as she attempted to make deposits on a new house in Hart's development. Clay had canceled their joint cards the previous night, leaving only her personal card active, the one tied to the now-frozen accounts. At precisely 2:15 p.m., as Marina sat in her real estate office preparing property listings, a courier delivered the divorce papers. Clay had chosen the timing deliberately, late enough in the day to disrupt her work, but early enough to ensure maximum exposure. Simultaneously, evidence packages were delivered to all involved parties. Ronald Chavez received notice of his contracting license suspension. Janice Roberts faced an ethics board hearing. Hart's business partners got copies of federal tax investigation documents. Marina's family received proof of her systematic deception. Clay monitored the aftermath from his command center at work, where he was ostensibly focused on a major system upgrade. In reality, he coordinated with his team of allies as years of Marina's careful planning imploded in a single afternoon. Hart's assets are frozen, Teresa reported via secure message. He's already throwing Marina under the bus to save himself. Marina tried calling me, Gabriella texted. She's hysterical. Says you've ruined everything. Clay's phone lit up with Marina's name. He let it ring through to voicemail, recording every desperate message as she realized the extent of her situation. No more secret accounts, no dream house in Hart's development, no carefully orchestrated exit strategy. The final blow came from an unexpected quarter. Hart's children, James and Emily, publicly denounced their father's pattern of family destruction. Their social media posts, carefully orchestrated with Teresa's help, went viral in their community. You orchestrated all of this, Megan said admiringly during their end-of-day update. Every single element timed perfectly. Clay's response was calm, but his eyes held a cold satisfaction. I'm an emergency dispatcher, Megan. My job is to coordinate responses to crisis situations. Marina and Hart created the crisis. I just managed the response. They never stood a chance, did they? They thought they were dealing with a workaholic father too busy to notice their schemes. They forgot that my work involves anticipating worst-case scenarios and developing containment strategies. As Clay drove home that evening, his phone filled with messages from the devastated members of Marina's conspiracy. He ignored them all, focusing instead on the text from Max. Dad, can you help me prepare for the chess tournament this weekend? Everything else could wait. He'd sprung his trap perfectly, dismantling Marina's elaborate plans with surgical precision. Now it was time to focus on what really mattered, his children and the future he'd protected for them. The war wasn't over. Marina would certainly retaliate once she recovered from the initial shock. But Clay had anticipated that too. After all, managing ongoing crises was his specialty, and he'd made sure to keep plenty of evidence in reserve for the battles to come. Marina's voice echoed through the local news station's morning broadcast, her carefully rehearsed victim narrative falling flat against the mountain of evidence Clay had released. My husband is a manipulative workaholic who's turned my own children against me, she claimed, tears perfectly timed for the camera. He's fabricated evidence to destroy my reputation and steal my family. In the dispatch center break room, Clay's colleagues watched the interview with barely contained disgust. Andrea Small clicked off the TV before Marina could continue her performance. That woman has some nerve, Kayla Harper muttered, standing protectively near Clay. After what she did to your family. Clay maintained his usual composed demeanor, checking his phone as another text from Sophie arrived. His daughter had been reaching out constantly since the truth exploded into the open. Dad, can we talk? Please? I need to tell you everything. He arranged to meet Sophie at a quiet cafe after his shift, choosing neutral ground for what he knew would be a difficult conversation. When he arrived, she was already there, looking smaller and younger than her 16 years. I'm so sorry, Dad, she burst out as soon as he sat down. I should have told you what Mom was doing. The way she made us lie about those Sunday meetings, how she kept saying you were too busy to care. Clay's voice remained gentle but firm. Tell me everything, Sophie. No more secrets. The story poured out. How Marina had gradually introduced Hart and his children into their lives, painting pictures of a perfect blended family. How she'd manipulated Sophie's teenage desire for understanding, using Hart's daughter Emily as bait for friendship. She made it seem so natural. Sophie's voice cracked. Like we're just making new friends. But then she started saying things about you. How you cared more about your job than us. How Lawrence would be a better father. And you believed her? No. I mean, sometimes I was confused, but Sophie wiped her eyes. Tyler kept saying it felt wrong. He actually started recording some of Mom's conversations because he was worried about how she was manipulating me. Clay made a mental note to reassess his opinion of Sophie's boyfriend. The boy had shown better judgment than he'd expected. Later that evening, Max caught Clay in his home office. His 12-year-old son stood in the doorway, chess trophy clutched in his hands like a shield. I knew something was wrong, Max said quietly. Mom kept trying to make me spend time with James, saying he could be like my big brother. But he was mean when adults weren't watching. Call me a chess nerd. Clay's hands tightened imperceptibly on his desk. Why didn't you tell me? Mom said you were too busy with work to care about family dynamics. But that wasn't true. You never missed a single chess tournament, even when you worked double shifts. The next blow to Marina's reputation came from an unexpected source. James and Emily Hart publicly posted their support for Clay on social media, detailing how their father and Marina had forced them into uncomfortable family bonding sessions. We've seen this pattern before, Emily's post read. Our father destroys families for sport, and we refuse to be part of it anymore. Mr. Martin, we're sorry for our role in hurting your children. The dispatch center provided another victory. Andrea called Clay into her office with unexpected news. The board was impressed by how you handled both the automation crisis and your personal situation, she announced. They're creating a new position, Department Supervisor of Emergency Response Training. The job is yours if you want it. Kayla, who had been instrumental in helping Clay reorganize the dispatch training protocols during the crisis, smiled from her seat by the window. You've earned this, Clay. The way you've managed everything, it's been inspiring. The final nail in Marina's public relations coffin came from her own family. Gabriella Fink, tired of her sister's lies, released years of emails showing Marina's calculated destruction of her marriage. My sister isn't a victim, Gabriella told the same news station that had aired Marina's tearful interview. She's a manipulator who chose wealth and status over her family's happiness. The real victim was Clay, who worked himself to exhaustion providing for his family while she planned to steal his children. The community's response was overwhelming. Parents from Max's chess club and Sophie's school rallied around Clay. Tyler's family offered support and testimony about Marina's manipulation. Even Clay's emergency response team submitted statements about his dedication as a father despite his demanding job. Marina's carefully constructed narrative crumbled. Her own children refused to support her version of events. Her lover's children denounced her. Her family exposed her lies. And through it all, Clay maintained his characteristic calm, letting the truth do its work. The family courtroom fell silent as Judge Eleanor Martinez reviewed the evidence. Marina sat with her increasingly uncomfortable legal team, watching her chances of custody slipping away with each document the judge examined. Mrs. Martin, Judge Martinez finally spoke, her tone sharp. Would you care to explain these financial records? The evidence Clay had gathered painted a devastating picture. 8 years of systematic financial fraud, unauthorized use of inheritance money, secret offshore accounts, and attempted asset hiding. All meticulously documented. Your Honor, Marina's lawyer attempted to intervene. My client was acting under the influence of Mr. Hart? Judge Martinez finished dryly. Yes, let's discuss Lawrence Hart. The real estate developer's empire was collapsing spectacularly. The IRS investigation had uncovered decades of tax evasion and fraud. Hart's business partners, led by Stephen Fry, had turned state's evidence to save themselves. The court has reviewed Mr. Hart's pattern of behavior, the judge continued. 3 failed marriages, multiple instances of family manipulation, and a consistent record of financial fraud. Mrs. Martin, you chose to actively participate in these schemes while attempting to alienate your children from their father. Clay sat quietly beside Megan Ruiz, his evidence organized in neat files before him. The financial investigation had revealed Marina's attempts to transfer his inheritance money into Hart's development projects. Every Sunday meeting, every manipulative conversation with the children, every secret account, all documented and verified. Furthermore, Judge Martinez added, the court takes a very dim view of your attempts to damage Mr. Martin's reputation through false media statements. The judge turned her attention to Ronald Chavez, who faced his own legal troubles for facilitating the financial fraud. His contracting license had been permanently suspended, and criminal charges were pending. Janice Roberts had already faced consequences. Her real estate license revoked after the ethics investigation revealed her role in Marina's deception. The professional fallout had been swift and merciless. Given the overwhelming evidence, Judge Martinez declared, this court finds in favor of Mr. Martin. Full custody of both children is awarded to their father, with Mrs. Martin's visitation subject to supervision and review. After the hearing, Teresa Fletcher caught up with Clay outside the courthouse. The children want you to have this. She handed him a letter from James and Emily. They're relieved to be back in my custody. Lawrence showed his true colors once his assets were frozen. Abandoned all of us to try saving himself. Clay's evidence had ensured Teresa regained full custody of her children, another family rescued from Hart's toxic influence. The documentation of Hart's child support fraud had been particularly damning. How are Sophie and Max handling everything? Teresa asked. They chose to stay with me, Clay replied. Marina's manipulation backfired. The more she pushed, the more they saw through her act. The final settlement was appropriately harsh. Marina's attempts to claim primary custody had failed spectacularly, her own recorded conversations with Hart revealing plans to cut Clay out of his children's lives completely. Megan Ruiz called it one of the most comprehensive victories she'd ever seen. You didn't just win, Clay. You established a precedent for how these cases should be handled. Snow fell softly outside the dispatch center's windows as Clay reviewed the latest training protocols. His emergency response program had become a model for departments across the region, combining human insight with technological support. A knock at his office door revealed Kayla Harper, now his partner both professionally and personally. Their relationship had developed naturally in the aftermath of the divorce, built on mutual respect and shared values. Max just called, she smiled. He won his regional chess championship. Sophie's driving him home from the tournament. Clay's pride showed in his subtle smile. The past year had transformed his family in unexpected ways. Sophie had started volunteer work at the local crisis center, turning her experience with manipulation into a determination to help others. Max's chess skills had soared as he channeled his energy into positive achievements, inspired by his father's example of integrity under pressure. The dispatch center itself had changed. Clay's training program, developed during the automation crisis, now served as a blueprint for other emergency response centers. The human element he'd fought to preserve had proven invaluable. Did you see this? Kayla handed him a newspaper clipping. Marina had moved to Arizona after Hart abandoned her, her dreams of wealth and status shattered. Hart himself faced federal charges, his carefully constructed empire dismantled by the evidence Clay had gathered. Clay had inadvertently become a resource for other betrayed spouses, his methodical approach to documenting evidence now cited in family court cases across the state. The precedent set by his case had strengthened protections against parental alienation and financial fraud. Dad! Max burst into the office, chess trophy held high. Coach says I might make national rankings by next year. Sophie followed more sedately, her crisis center volunteer badge catching the light. Mrs. Anderson at the center asked if you'd speak to their support group again. Your last talk really helped people understand how to protect themselves legally. Clay gathered his family, including Kayla, who had earned her place in their healing journey, and headed home for their traditional holiday celebration. The house felt warmer now, cleansed of Marina's deception and filled instead with genuine connections. Teresa and her children would join them later, another family rebuilt from Hart's destruction. Even Tyler, now Sophie's steady boyfriend, had been invited, his early warning about Marina's manipulation earning him a place in their trusted circle. As Clay watched his family arrange presents and decorations, he reflected on the year's transformation. His tactical approach to crisis management had saved more than his job. It had preserved his family's future, exposed long-running fraud, and created a roadmap for others facing similar battles. The price of loyalty had been high, but the rewards proved greater. His children were thriving, his career soared, and his new relationship showed him what genuine partnership felt like. Most importantly, his family had emerged stronger, bound together by truth rather than manipulation. The holiday gathering represented everything Marina and Hart had failed to destroy: genuine love, earned trust, and the unshakable bonds of a family that had faced betrayal and emerged victorious. Epilogue. 5 years later, the Arizona sun beat down mercilessly as Marina Martin, now using her maiden name after her third failed relationship, locked up the small real estate office where she worked as a junior agent. Her designer clothes and luxury car were long gone, replaced by off-the-rack suits and a used Honda. The irony wasn't lost on her that she now sold modest homes in a desert suburb, a far cry from the luxury developments she'd once dreamed of managing with Lawrence Hart. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophie, now 21 and graduating college. "Don't bother coming to graduation. Dad and Kayla are walking me across stage." Marina's attempts to reconnect with her children over the years had met with consistent rejection. Sophie's work at the Crisis Center had given her profound insight into manipulation tactics, while Max's chess-honed strategic thinking let him see through every attempt at emotional maneuvering. Across town, Lawrence Hart sat in his one-bedroom apartment, reviewing denial letters from potential investors. His release from federal prison 6 months ago had come with hefty restrictions on his business activities. The man who once commanded a real estate empire now couldn't even qualify for a real estate license. His own children maintained their distance. James, now 19, and Emily, 22, had thrived under Teresa's custody. Emily's psychology degree focused on studying family trauma, while James had become an advocate for financial literacy, both turning their father's betrayal into fuel for helping others. Meanwhile, in their hometown, Clay's emergency response training program had revolutionized dispatch centers across the country. The integration of human judgment with advanced technology had saved countless lives, earning him national recognition in the emergency response field. His office walls displayed family milestones: Sophie's psychology degree acceptance letter, Max's national chess championship photos, and pictures from his wedding to Kayla 2 years ago. Their blended family had grown to include Kayla's young daughter from her previous marriage, giving Max the little sister he'd always wanted. "Chief Martin?" His assistant knocked on the door. "The FBI consulting team is here about implementing your training protocols nationally." Clay's methodology for documenting evidence had extended far beyond his own case. Family courts nationwide cited the Martin Protocol when handling cases of parental alienation and financial fraud. His meticulous approach had helped countless other betrayed spouses protect themselves and their children. At the local crisis center, Sophie led support groups for children of divorce, her firsthand experience with manipulation making her uniquely qualified to help others heal. Her relationship with Tyler had strengthened through the years, their shared experience during Marina's deception creating an unshakable bond of trust. Max, now 17, had earned his chess grandmaster title, his strategic brilliance drawing comparisons to his father's methodical approach to crisis management. He'd recently started dating Emily Hart's best friend, the irony not lost on anyone that the children had formed better relationships than their manipulative parents had tried to force. Teresa Fletcher had turned her experience into a successful consulting business, helping divorce attorneys identify patterns of financial fraud and child manipulation. She and Clay occasionally collaborated on particularly complex cases, their shared history with Hart making them formidable advocates for other betrayed families. Ronald Chavez served his sentence for financial fraud in a minimum security prison, his contracting license permanently revoked. His wife Janice, stripped of her real estate credentials, had divorced him and moved to another state, their comfortable life destroyed by their role in Marina's schemes. The annual holiday gathering at Clay and Kayla's home had become a celebration of resilience. Teresa and her children, Tyler's family, even some of the people Clay and Sophie had helped through their darkest times, all coming together to mark another year of healing and growth. Marina's sister Gabriella occasionally sent updates about Marina's continued downward spiral. After Hart abandoned her, she tried to recreate her comfortable life with a series of wealthy men, each relationship failing as her manipulation tactics became increasingly transparent. Her attempts to rebuild her real estate career had stalled at entry-level positions, her reputation forever tainted by the evidence Clay had revealed. Hart's fall had been even more spectacular. His federal conviction for tax evasion and fraud had included massive fines and restitution payments. The man who once boasted about his business genius now lived on Social Security, his attempts to restart his career blocked by his criminal record and the sophisticated background checks Clay's case had inspired. The Martin versus Martin case had changed family law practice across the country. Clay's methodical documentation became required reading in law schools, teaching future attorneys how to protect clients from sophisticated manipulation schemes. The financial investigation techniques he'd employed were now standard practice in high-asset divorce cases. Kayla had expanded the dispatch training program to include specific protocols for domestic crisis calls, incorporating lessons learned from Clay's experience. Their professional partnership matched their personal one, both focused on helping others navigate their worst moments with strength and dignity. Max's chess tournaments had become family events, with Kayla's daughter Emma proudly wearing T-shirts supporting her big brother. The 12-year-old had inherited her mother's emergency medical training interest and her stepfather's strategic mind, already talking about combining both in her future career. Sophie's crisis center work had expanded to include a specialized program for teens caught in parental manipulation, her personal experience informing the curriculum. She and Tyler had recently bought a house just minutes from Clay and Kayla, ensuring their future children would grow up surrounded by the strong family bonds Marina had tried to destroy. The local news occasionally ran stories about the case's lasting impact, particularly when similar schemes were uncovered in high-profile divorces. Clay's calm, methodical approach to destroying Marina and Hart's elaborate deception had become a blueprint for exposing narcissistic manipulation in family courts. One morning, as Clay reviewed applications for the latest dispatch training cohort, he found a familiar name. Hart's former business partner, Stephen Fry, had recommended his daughter for the program. The note attached explained how observing Clay's handling of the crisis had inspired her to pursue emergency response work. Every Christmas, Clay received cards and letters from families his case had helped. Parents who'd found strength in his example, children who'd learned to recognize manipulation, attorneys who'd used his methods to protect vulnerable clients. Each story confirming that from the ashes of Marina's betrayal, something valuable had emerged. Marina's last attempt to revise history, a self-serving memoir manuscript, had been rejected by every publisher, the documented evidence of her deception making her claims of victimhood impossible to market. She tried to paint herself as a woman trapped in a loveless marriage, only to have her own recorded conversations expose the calculated cruelty of her actions. Hart's children had published their own story, a powerful account of recognizing and escaping generational patterns of manipulation. Their book, unlike Marina's, had become required reading in family therapy programs, its honest examination of their father's destructive patterns helping others identify similar behavior. Clay's office included a wall of recognition, but his favorite item wasn't an award or commendation. It was a simple chess piece, a knight, given to him by Max after his first championship win. "Because you taught me how to think ahead," the card had read, and showed me what real strategy looks like. The price of loyalty had been high, but the returns proved immeasurable. From the ashes of betrayal, Clay had built something unshakable, a legacy of integrity, a framework for protecting others, and most importantly, a family bound by genuine love and hard-won wisdom. Marina's carefully constructed fantasy of a perfect blended family had crumbled, while Clay's authentic relationships flourished. Her exile in Arizona and Hart's imprisonment served as constant reminders that actions carried consequences, that betrayal exacted its own price. In the end, the emergency dispatcher, who'd seemed like an easy target, had proved to be their downfall. Clay's methodical dismantling of their schemes had transformed family law, created new protections for betrayed spouses, and shown others how to weather their own storms with dignity and strength. The price of loyalty, it turned out, was nothing compared to the cost of betrayal. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.